So guys, welcome to our channel once again. In today's video on our biology JAMB exam revision series, we'll be solving some past questions on nervous coordination. So be sure to stay to the end of this video, and you can feel free also to pause the video at any point and try out the answer to the question. So let's start with this. We have 20 questions to solve here. So let's start with the number one question. It says, what is a reflex action? Option A says, a rapid involuntary response to a stimulus. B, a voluntary response to a stimulus. C, a conscious decision-making process. And D, a slow, deliberate response to a stimulus. So guys, the answer to this question is option A, a rapid involuntary response to a stimulus. A reflex action is actually a rapid involuntary response to a stimulus. So let's go ahead and check out the next question, and that's question number 2. Question number 2 says, which of the following statements about neurons is true? A, neurons are only found in the brain. B, neurons are the functional unit of the nervous system. C, neurons transmit electrical signals in the form of sound waves. D, neurons do not have the ability to regenerate. So guys, the answer to this question is option B. Neurons are the functional unit of the nervous system. So the functional unit of the nervous system is neurons. The nervous system are actually made of units and units and units of the neurons. But then, even though the brain is made up of neurons, but the brain is not the only part of the body that you can find neurons. So option A is not correct. And then for option C, it says neurons transmit electrical signals in the form of sound waves. Neurons actually transmit electrical signals, but not in form of sound waves. So that's not also correct. So option D says neurons do not have the ability to regenerate, but actually neurons have the ability to regenerate. So guys, the correct answer to this question is option B. Neurons are the functional units of the nervous system. So guys, let's look at the next question. That's question number 3. The medulla oblongata controls all the following except A, breathing rate, B, blood pressure, C, heart rate, D, balance and postures. So guys, the answer to this question is option D, and that's balance and postures. So actually the medulla oblongata is a part of the brain that is found within the brainstem, where you have the medulla oblongata and the pons. Actually, most of the actions controlled by the medulla oblongata are autonomic functions, and it's mostly related to biological cycles like sleep and wake cycle, breathing rate, blood pressure, and the rest. So heartbeat is also controlled by the medulla oblongata, but the medulla oblongata is not associated with balance and postures. So guys, the answer to this question is option D. So let's look at the next question, and that's question number 4. Use the diagram below to answer this question. Here the question is, the point marked I is referred to as A, dendrites, B, node of Ranvier, C, axon, and D, myelin sheath. So guys, this part of the neuron is the node of Ranvier. So the answer to this question is option B. Also take note that this entire part is the axon, but then this axon is comprising of these myelin sheets and these little gaps between the myelin sheets known as node of Ranvier. So the reason for this structure having the myelin sheets and the node of Ranvier is so that the nerves can conduct or transmit impulse faster. So guys, the answer to this question is node of Ranvier. These little spaces between the myelin sheets is called the node of Ranvier. So let's take note of that. Now let's check out the next question, and that's question number 5. Question number 5 says, the part of the brain that controls the body posture is A. Cerebellum, B. Midbrain, C. Cerebrum, and D. Forebrain. So guys, the answer to this question is cerebellum. The cerebellum is the part of the brain that is responsible for motor control. It controls the posture and movements as well. Question number 6, it says, the ability of a living organism to detect and respond to changes in the environment is referred to as A. Growth, B. Locomotion, C. Taxis, and D. Irritability. So guys, the answer to this question is irritability. Irritability is the ability of an organism to respond to changes in their environment. So the answer to this question, guys, is option D. So let's look at the next question. That's question number 7. Okay, we have a diagram here, and the question says, the structure can be found in the A. Peripheral nervous system only, B. Central nervous system only, C. Peripheral and central nervous systems, D. Sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So guys, the answer to this question is option C, and that's peripheral and central nervous system. So this is the structure of a neuron. So we know we can find this nerve cell anywhere in the nervous system, whether it's peripheral or central nervous system. So guys, the answer to this question is option C, and that's peripheral and central nervous system. So guys, let's look at the next question, and that's question number 8. It says, the neuron that transmits impulses from the receptor to the central nervous system is A. Efferent, B. Afferent, C. Intermediate, and D. Relay. So guys, the answer to this question is the afferent. The afferent neuron is a neuron that transmits impulse from the receptors to the central nervous system. So guys, if you want to know more about this, we can actually discuss this using a model. We have to understand that there are receptor cells and then there are effector cells. So usually when the receptors sense the signals, there are neurons that carries these signals that are sensed by the receptors to the central nervous system, and then these information or signal will be interpreted in the central nervous system and then will now be sent via another neuron or another set of neurons. Now, this set of neurons will now transmit this signal down to the effector organs, or the organs that will carry out the actions required. So guys, I often like to think of this as A and E neurons when I know that A comes before E. So afferent neurons, that's the A neuron, and efferent neurons, that's the E neurons. Afferent neurons are actually the first set of neurons, that's the ones that transmit the signal from the receptors to the central nervous system. And then the efferent neurons are the ones that transmits the integrated information down to the effector organs. So I also like to think of it this way, that the efferent neurons send signals to the effector organs. So guys, the answer to this question is afferent. That's option B. The afferent neurons are the ones that transmit the impulse from the receptors to the central nervous system, or the integrating center. So guys, let's look at the next question, and that's question number 9. Question number 9 says, the part of the brain that is responsible for the control of voluntary movements and interpretation of sensations is known as A. Cerebellum, B. Cerebrum, C. Optic lobe, D. Olfactory lobe. So guys, the answer to this question is B, and that's cerebrum. So the cerebrum is the part of the brain that is responsible for voluntary movements. All planned actions are integrated in the cerebrum. The cerebrum is the site of intelligence. That's where all planned movements is actually initiated and integrated. So guys, let's look at the next question, and that's question number 10. It says, the two key cations involved in the action potential of nervous transmission are A. Sodium and potassium, B. Magnesium and potassium, C. Iron and magnesium, D. Sodium and iron. So guys, the answer to this question is sodium and potassium. So sodium and potassium are the two key cations that are involved in the action potential of the nervous transmission. So if you can remember so well, during the action potential of nerve transmission, sodium influx leads to depolarization, and this depolarization is actually the system that brings about firing of the action potential. Whereas after depolarization, there should be a repolarization, and that is being achieved by potassium efflux. So what's sodium influx and potassium efflux? Sodium influx is entrance of sodium into the cell, or entrance of sodium into the cell, whereas potassium efflux is exit of potassium from the cell. So I hope you just get that. That's the two cations there are sodium and potassium. So let's look at the next question, guys. The next question is question number 11. It says, use the diagram below to answer the questions. So here's the diagram. The question says, the diagram represents A. Sensory neurons, B. Relay neuron, C. Afferent neuron, D. Motor neuron. So guys, the answer to this question is actually motor neuron, and that's option D. So this represents motor neuron because here we have the neuron attached to an effector organ. So you can see the muscle fiber here that it is attached to here. So you see the axon of the neuron is attached to a muscle fiber, which is an effector organ. So guys, there are two major effector organs, and that's the muscles and glands. So guys, you see this neuron attached to muscle. The axon actually of this neuron is attached to muscle fiber, showing that it is an effector neuron. So the effector neurons are also the motor neurons. So there are sensory neurons, which are afferent neurons, and then there are also motor neurons, which are the efferent neurons. So the efferent neurons or the motor neurons are the ones that send the signal to the effector organ. So you can see that this neuron, the axon of this neuron, is attached to a muscle fiber, and as such, it is a motor neuron. So guys, take note of that. That's the answer to this question, option D. So let's look at the next question. That's question number 12. It says, which of the following is a characteristic of cells related to irritability? A, ability to replicate DNA. B, ability to synthesize proteins. C, ability to respond to stimuli. D, ability to generate energy. So guys, the answer to this question is option C, the ability to respond to stimuli. That's the ability to respond to changes in their environments. So guys, let's look at the next question, and that's question number 13. It says, which of the following statements describes an autonomic nervous system? A, it affects glands, cardiac muscles, and smooth muscles. B, it always stimulates effectors. C, activities are voluntary. And D, it deals with external stimuli and their responses. So guys, the answer to this question is option A. The autonomic nervous system actually affects glands, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscles. It actually controls internal organs which are non-voluntary. So these non-voluntary organs are those of the glands, those of the cardiac muscles, and smooth muscles. So it's majorly for involuntary muscles. It actually affects majorly the involuntary muscles, so which are those of the glands, cardiac muscles, and smooth muscles. So guys, the answer to this question is option A. So let's look at the next question, and that's question number 14. It says, the cerebrum, olfactory lobe, thalamus, and hypothalamus are found in the A, hindbrain, B, backbrain, C, forebrain, and D, midbrain. So guys, the answer to this question is the forebrain. The cerebrum, the olfactory lobes, the thalamus, and the hypothalamus are part of the forebrain. That's the front part of the brain. So that's the answer to this question. They are part of the forebrain, and the forebrain is actually the largest part of the brain that's found in the front. So the next question is question number 15. It says, which of the following is the main function of the brain? A, pumping blood to the body. B, controlling voluntary movements. C, filtering waste from the blood. D, producing hormones for growth. So guys, the answer to this question is option B, controlling voluntary movements. So the brain helps us to control and coordinate movements. So out of these whole options, the one that best aligns to the question, or the one that best answers the question, is option B, and that's controlling voluntary movements. So guys, let's look at the next question, question number 16. It says, which of the following controls all voluntary action? A, pons varoli, B, hypothalamus, C, olfactory lobes, and D, cerebrum. So guys, like we said earlier on, the cerebrum actually controls voluntary action. It is the site of intelligence. It controls most voluntary processes and controls both thoughts, emotion. It's there for problem solving, and most voluntary physical actions, they are all controlled by the cerebrum. So guys, let's look at the next question, question number 17. It says, the part of the brain that is responsible for the control of voluntary movements and interpretation of sensations is known as A, optic lobe, B, olfactory lobe, C, cerebrum, and D, cerebellum. So guys, again, The answer to this question is option C, that's cerebrum. Cerebrum is responsible for controlling voluntary movements, all voluntary actions, thought processes, sensations, and the rest. They are controlled by the cerebrum. So guys, take note of that. The next question is question number 18. It says the central nervous system consists of A, brain and ulna, B, brain and pterygius, C, spinal cord and the lung, D, spinal cord and the brain. So guys, the answer to this question is spinal cord and the brain. So guys, the central nervous system, just like the name implies, are the part of the nervous system that is centrally placed. So you can visualize the position of the brain running through down to the spinal cord. So that's the central nervous system. Whereas the associated nervous system at the periphery, extending from the central nervous system, are the peripheral nervous system. They include the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. So guys, the central nervous system is just the brain and the spinal cord, or simply the spinal cord and the brain, and that's option D. So let's look at the next question. Question number 19. It says, which of the following is not an example of a reflex action? A, contraction of the pupil of the eye, B, thinking, C, blinking, D, sneezing. So guys, thinking is not a reflex action. So the answer to this question is B. Actually, we need the intervention of the brain or the integrating center for us to think. It's a conscious process. Thinking is a conscious process of decision making. So it is not a reflex action. So guys, let's look at the next and the last question, and that's question number 20. It says, the peripheral nervous system consists of 12 cranial nerves connecting the brain to the head and A, neck region, B, shoulder region, C, face region, D, hand region. So guys, the answer to this question is option A, and that's neck region. The cranial nerves are consisting of 12 nerves which are connecting the brain to the head region and the neck region. So those nerves connecting the brain to the head regions and the neck region, they are the cranial nerves. So guys, the answer to this question is option A, and that's neck region. So this will be the end of this lesson for today, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're not yet a subscriber. Also, if you have any question regarding this video, feel free to drop your question on the comment section below, and we'll ensure to give you a response. Don't forget to share this video with your friends to enable us reach out to more people. Thank you for watching this video.